So the ostensible cause for our celebration today is the launch of the library's beautiful new digital archive, Roxbury People, Places and Events 1950 to 1975. Made up, as you'll all understand, of historic photos from the Freedom House collection. Now, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, since we have a number of folk who are going to speak later on, and I know you'll hear more about the archive and Freedom House from them. But I will just, amongst the listing of things that we're celebrating, note that Freedom House itself is approaching its 60th year. So there's one cause of celebration that we need to note. But it's always good to have an opportunity to celebrate partnerships. And to the extent that Freedom House was formed to foster partnerships, and to the extent that the library and Freedom House working together have been able to make such wonderful accomplishments come to fruition, this is indeed a cause of true celebration. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? So said Martin Luther King. It's an easy enough question to answer as far as the creators of Freedom House were concerned, Otto and Muriel Snowden. For the library, we hope this project will open up some new horizons that might not otherwise have been revealed to people who might not even have known of the existence of the resources we make available here. So, to talk a little more about this, I'm very happy to welcome some of our distinguished guests here today. They're going to fill us in on Freedom House and talk about the collection itself. So, welcome to Gail Snowden, daughter of the founders, and currently Executive Director of Freedom House itself, a nationally recognized leader in urban community development and a good friend to the library. Welcome also to Joseph Warren here, Special Advisor at Northeastern to the Director of Government Relations. And Joseph is leader of the Lower Roxbury Black History Project, which he may want to fill us in on a little bit in the course of the afternoon. Welcome to Joan Kresak, the University Archivist and Head of Special Collections and finally, welcome to Richard O'Brien, Director of the John D. O'Brien African American Institute, who's going to lead off our discourse this afternoon by filling us in with some of the history of Freedom House. So, all right.
Well, first let me just say thank you all, and I apologize for being a little late myself. I was running over from a talk that I had with some students in the computer science department, and invited them over, but they hadn't finished class. So, what I want to briefly give you some background on the Freedom House and the history, and as I mentioned to Gail.
I'm sorry, do you mind speaking a little louder?
A little louder.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Is that all right? So I'll speak a little bit about the history of the Freedom House. And as I mentioned to Gail, those of you here who may have some of that history embodied in your experiences, feel free to chime in if I leave stuff out, or if you think that I've gone off course. I try to do a little bit of research in preparing for this, in addition to my own experiences of having been to the Freedom House several times as a young man. But it was founded in 1949 by Otto and Muriel Snowden. The initial goal of the Freedom House was to centralize community activism in the fight for neighborhood improvement, good schools, and harmony among racial, ethnic, and religious groups in Roxbury. After incorporation in 1949, the Freedom House moved into its first location, 151 Humboldt Avenue. The Freedom House quickly received community, city, and state support, and in 1952 was able to purchase the Hebrew Teachers College on 14 Crawford Street, where it now is located. Early programming focused primarily on activities for children, youth and adults that would strengthen relations between the African American and Jewish residents in the Upper Roxbury area. The Freedom House was very active in community development during and after some of the failures of urban renewal. Many prominent personalities have spoken at the Freedom House over the years, such as Bayard Rustin, Louis Lomax, and representatives from Freedom Riders and Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. But the Freedom House has had as its core an educational program that has focused on almost entirely on basic skill building and college preparation and computer literacy and access to scholarships. Ultimately, the Freedom House has sought over the years to centralize community activism in the fight for neighborhood improvement and good schools and other harmony among the many different groups. The Snowdens wanted to ensure that Roxbury's stability as a middle class, racially mixed neighborhood, and hope to achieve this goal by linking existing services and creating services where they were lacking. And as a young man, I remember many a times being at the Freedom House for community events, mostly around community organizing. And I must tell you, it was a very home feeling place for a lot of us that went there. We were always welcome. The people there were always concerned and committed to the community. And I can think of no other organization better fitting for this kind of an honor here at Northeastern in archiving its history. No better place, Northeastern being where it's situated, to be able to archive some of the history of the Freedom House. So with that being said, I'm supposed to venture over to the panel, and then we'll enter in a much deeper discussion about the Freedom House.
Thank you. So yes, if I can just fill you in a little bit on the program for the rest of the afternoon. We do look forward to hearing our panelists share some of their recollections and thoughts about the materials that are going to be on display here. I know both Joe and Richard have to leave earlier than they would otherwise have wanted to, so you'll excuse them if they do so. When they've spoken and you've had a chance to interact with them, Joan Krizak is going to give a little show and tell on the archive itself, and then there'll be an opportunity for some hands-on questioning and a little more informal investigation of the database. So without further ado, I'll hand you all over to the tender mercies of our panelists.
You want to go?
You want me to go first?
Of course.
Thank you. I guess I'm in a very unique position of having lived with Freedom House up close and personal all of my life. I would tell you at times it's been a love-hate relationship. Freedom House is my sibling, and it's very, very hard to compete with an idea and a passion that your parents have. But I've come to appreciate Freedom House as I can now look back, and to realize so much that went on there was so integral to the city of Boston, to the lives of people of color, and I think it was unique. So now that I'm the CEO of Freedom House, I have a new project called Coming Home to the House. I really would love to collect the stories, the donations, the volunteerism, to reconnect people with Freedom House. It was a very unique building, and I've been thinking a lot about the part of the building that burned down, and it was a wonderful, wonderful Gothic kind of a looking building, and I can remember all these nooks and crannies on the second floor. We used to play hide and seek because there was a nursery school at Freedom House. But that building was originally a private residence, and then it became a Baptist church, and then it became a Hebrew synagogue. They built on the brick building to become part of the Hebrew Teachers College, and then it became Freedom House. So the building had in its DNA an ecumenical spirit. And I feel that spirit today, but I really do miss the beautiful, beautiful building. So if you have time to go on and look, you will see this gorgeous building. Freedom House was the home to many, many activities. I can remember the coffee hours that brought people together. It was part of the theme of overcoming the distance between racial groups and ethnicities, and sometimes I think we miss that today you know, that Boston is such a city of tribes. I don't see people coming together in the way that they used to at Freedom House. So they would have speakers and they would just have a wonderful time. Freedom House did so much that that you don't even know probably that went on at Freedom House. So for example, the first Ebony Fashion Fairs were at Freedom House. Today we go to Steppin' Out, but in the old days we went to the Monticello, we went to Blindstrom's, and we heard Nancy Wilson, we heard wonderful, wonderful artists. Other organizations were nurtured at Freedom House, the predecessor to Metco. Northeastern's own Ellen Jackson worked at Freedom House, at the Freedom House Institute. There was a program on science and engineering for young people because my parents believed that that science was so important. There were programs to send young people abroad, particularly to Africa in the summertime. And one of the, I think, most lasting legacies of Freedom House is Project Reach, which was a program to help young people with scholarships, 4 years of scholarships, but almost more importantly to talk to them about character and about giving back to the community. And somehow my parents knew that you had to think about the next generation of leadership. And that's come home to me a lot when I heard Colin Powell talk about the transfer of leadership to Obama. And we need to be prepared for that. We need to help the young people in any way that they ask us to, but it really is their time. So I see my time now at Freedom House is to do what I can to stabilize the financial picture. Like all nonprofits, if you read in the newspaper, this is a really terrible time for nonprofits. And I see that as what I can do, but my real job is to preserve the legacy, but to look ahead and to turn Freedom House over to the next generation of leadership. My daughter is at Boston College in development. She's about to have a baby, so there'll be another, and I think the baby's middle name's going to be Snowden. So, so somehow the Snowdens will go on, and you know, ultimately, I know we'll always be connected to Freedom House. We are, as was said, we are celebrating our 60th anniversary. We're having a breakfast on Thursday, but our big event, and I would love all of you to come, is our gala on April 16th, where we're going to have pictures, and we'd love to partner with Northeastern in some way so that people will know about this wonderful collection. You can find out information on our website, www.freedomhouse.com, or 617-445-2666. And my final pitch is to support the library, that digitizing this collection, I went through it, and first of all, I didn't realize I wore my skirts that short, or that I was ever that young, and all the different hairstyles. But it's just an amazing history, and to have Northeastern preserving history in this way, and then making it accessible, and digitizing this collection has done that. So half of the collection is done. We need to raise money to do the rest of the other half. So, you know, when you're writing out those checks at the end of the year, think of Northeastern and think of Freedom House too. Thank you.
I see a few of you in the audience with a little gray in your hair. How many of you knew Otto and Muriel here? Okay, so what I'm going to say to you, I think you really would appreciate. I had the honor of serving on the board of Freedom House, but more importantly, I got to know Otto and Muriel up close and personal. And to describe them is extremely difficult, but if you think of Otto, you think of straightforwardness, truth, take it or leave it, but here it is.
And a scotch in his hand.
And a scotch in his hand. I spent many a night with Otto and Muriel, both at Freedom House and at their home, during the desegregation period. That was the headquarters of desegregation, your house.
That's right.
We met in the basement with his dad.
I remember.
And Paul Parks and many others, when we talked about what to do about this crazy busing situation. And all the decisions that came out of the black community came from the leadership of the Snowdens in their basement, where we had hundreds of meetings, it seemed. But I wanted to just reflect a little bit on what I think Freedom House meant when I came here in the late 60s. One of the first people I met was her mom, Muriel. I was running a program called Brandeis Upward Bound, and she was a consultant to the Department of Education. She came out to visit the program. And instead of her investigating us, I spent more time draining her brain, and what a brain she had. We had an enormously, I think, positive relationship, and from there I began to work for them in many ways. I was the Assistant Secretary for Education in charge of desegregation for Governor Dukakis, and I was the one that brought the money to Ellen. I on a big check. I was really glad Ellen Jackson, who ran that whole process of desegregation in Boston. When Dukakis wanted to run for president, the first thing I wanted to do was go talk to Otto, especially Otto, because he came at it real straight. He knew everybody in the nation, and became a chief advisor to me and many others. And we formed a group of what I call elders, which Otto was the chairman of the board. What I found Freedom House to mean, though, more importantly, was when there were problem solvers. Anything that had to do with the black community, working with South Boston or East Boston, you'd come to Freedom House. And from Freedom House came many other organizations. People don't realize they didn't want to be the organization. They spawned many others. Roxbury Multi-Service Center. Lena Park got its really original start there, and goes on and on and on because of the vision that the Snowdens had, that they were the sort of catalyst for looking at problems and coming up with solutions. When we were going to build this library, Bill Fowler, I was hoping Bill was here.
He wished he could. He's away today.
Bill also was on the board of Freedom House. Well, we said we must have an archival project here at this library. We must have it. And so we went around and around with then President Curry and convinced him. But I think the thing that won him over, that the first project we were going to go after for archival was Freedom House. So when I approached Otto about it, he's tough. Muriel had passed, and we talked to Gail, and we talked to Otto. Otto was tough. He said, how is it going to be used? What's going to be like? What is this new archival stuff? And he really came at us real hard. But after going through it, he said, okay, I'll let you have the papers. And we were able to have a big event here. Gail was here, and Otto was here. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then we were able to bring on Joan. And but the first thing we Bill and I did was Freedom House had all of its papers in trailers, every place. And so you ever see, look at me, a big guy, like I'm crawling on top of boxes. Bill Fowler's on the other side. We have these masks on. What a combination, Fowler and I crawling around in the trailer. But we found so many boxes of wonderful, rich things. We couldn't believe it. So, and I don't still know how Joan does it, but when she came on, there's something she does. She can look at a box. She can go through a box. If you ever had an experience with Joan, she can go through stuff so fast, catalog it, know where it is. And so I was absolutely amazed at her ability to understand what it was about and get it started. And on a very personal level, Otto was a friend and a mentor to me. And Muriel was definitely a leader in education and helped me in many ways shape the kind of educational programs I run today. So these are two very special people, and I don't want to lose them in this. Certainly the collection is important, but they were the inspiration to not only people like me, but hundreds and hundreds of people and organizations throughout the city from all races, all ethnic backgrounds, incomes. You mentioned the Snowdens, they stand at attention. That's how wonderful they were. So I'm pleased to be a part of this and be a part of, and served on Freedom House's board. And as Gail knows, if she calls, I come running because of that wonderful legacy. Thank you.
She said, I'm calling. He said, you calling, right? Said,
yeah, I'm running.
Well, I certainly can only speak from how I saw it from the eyes of a child. But one thing that I distinctly remember about the Freedom House, I'm just having trouble with mics today, one of the things that I distinctly remembered about Freedom House, and having traveled all over the city with my dad to many community meetings and different organizations, the Freedom House always seemed like the place where just about everybody came. I mean, you had people fragmented around the community, but when it came to the Freedom House, people came from all different areas of Roxbury and the Dorchester area, and the city of Boston, for that matter.
Right, governors, mayors, congressmen, senators.
Yeah, I mean,
just as comfortable sitting around problem solving with us.
Yeah, and I distinctly remember when we were going through the busing situation. I distinctly remember my dad say it several times, saying, "We got to go to the Freedom House. We got to go to the Freedom House." And Otto and Muriel were always spoken of so highly and endearingly, and seen as, for him, almost like mentors too, and the elders for him during that time. But all of my memories of the Freedom House are fond memories. I mean, if you think about the struggles that community organizations have today, well, one thing that the Freedom House has, I think, over the other organizations is, one, that it's still standing fairly strong, but two, its rich history encompasses a lot of them, and a lot of their history. And so it's great that we've been able to capture this history, and that Northeastern has taken this on and archived it. Like I said, it's no better place in this city, I think, to archive these collections of the Freedom House than here at Northeastern. And my last comment, and Joe remembers this. We were over at Roxbury Community College a few weeks ago for the RAP conference, and I thought about it after I left the conference. I was on one of the panels then, and the thing that concerned me, and this is why I really like the fact that we're capturing the Freedom House, was that the many of the people in the audience were our elders, and some of the comments and the feedback and the discussion was about just how painful people were feeling about where we are as a community right now, and some of the things that we're going through as a community. And I think when we do things like capturing the history of some of our institutions in a way that they can live long beyond us, so that our young people can know that these things existed and how important they were, then I think for our elders, a lot of them, this is an important step in helping to solidify the legacy that a lot of them are leaving for our communities. A lot of people are just not happy where our communities are today, and to be able to reflect on the positive things that are coming out of what the Freedom House did for us as a community over the years, I think it's just a fantastic opportunity for young people, as well as those people who are doing research about community development, about community activism, about community engagement. Freedom House is an excellent example of all those things that were important to us as a community and important to us as a city. And so I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and I certainly will direct people to come and take a look at some of the things that we have here at Northeastern.
I wanted to add just a few more memories because, it wasn't always crisis, and there were fun times, and there was a nursery school at Freedom House, and you can see the pictures. Mrs. Yates was the teacher for the nursery school. And one day my dad got the idea to bring little baby chickens, little baby chicks to the nursery school, which was a great idea. But then after Easter was like, what are we going to do with them? So he gave them away to the neighbors, and one of them turned out to be a rooster. So Ozzie Jordan used to take the rooster for a walk in Harold Park. And then one day the rooster disappeared. I don't know quite what happened to the rooster, but they used to have a Halloween party. In the days when digital was around, they would get turkeys and give turkeys away and toys away. So it really was in many ways the heart of the community. And I think as we talk about the impact of Freedom House, I think you talked about the warmth that I think people felt, and somehow we need to recapture that. So that was it.
We open up for questions or
People have comments
or comments?
observations, or
Yeah.
Now's your chance.
Or reflections. Some other folks that may have some
Kind of
reflections.
solid myself.
I'd like to say we did have some good times. to what I will call Freedom House being the forerunner, if you will, or galas.
Mm. Yeah.
And bringing in big name stars.
Yeah.
You saw Cab Calloway,
Ooh.
Joe Williams,
Joe Williams,
Sammy Davis.
yes, all the big name entertainment. And some of those pictures are still around, Gail. I have to look for them.
Are those part of this?
No, because you know, a lot of people work at Freedom House, so
Mhm,
you know,
mhm.
they have things with them.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yes.
actually, we do have
Have the
pictures
Cab
of
Calloway?
the, what is it called, the Showcase of the Stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have Cab Calloway in here.
Nancy
We
Wilson.
have,
Nancy Wilson.
Yeah.
Nancy Wilson.
Uh-huh.
We have Sammy Davis.
And what's the lady who sang Hello Dolly? You know?
Carol Chan.
Pearl Bailey.
Pearl Bailey.
Pearl Bailey. She was,
His favorite
yeah.
one?
Yeah, yeah.
Pearl Bailey. Yeah.
There's pictures of the Golden Heirs in Barbados and some of the trips that they take, and they're still at Freedom House. They still meet on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It was some fun time.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right, that part, the Golden Heirs is another part of the history that I would like to see expanded some, because I met a lady at a Thanksgiving dinner who just talked about the beautiful trips that you have there, and she would love to see them continue, and that part was very good for the community as well.
Yes.
Nowadays, for the Golden Heirs, they have their meetings, but we're also trying to connect them to technology. And so every year we raise money from Verizon for our technology, Tech Savvy Seniors program, so that they can learn how to use the internet, email, be close to their grandchildren. And what I really would like to see is connecting our high school young people with the Golden Heirs
Yeah.
to try to make those relationships happen. So there are things that can be done today.
Mm-hmm.
Gail, I remember at times your dad would also look at people and say, "You ought to run for office," and he had quite a bit to say about you ought to support this person or that person. I remember Ed Brooke, they say, was running as a Democrat, suddenly got some advice from Otto, and
My dad was a Republican.
and he became Republican. We got the first black senator since Reconstruction. A lot of good things that your dad, boy, was he a tough guy, but he came at you real hard and straight. I know this gentleman, I don't know if you remember anything about Otto you'd like to share, but I saw you gray there.
Yeah.
Delbrook.
I'll stand up.
He took so
Okay.
many
I
pictures.
believe I was the first photographer for Freedom House.
Oh, wow.
One night about 1:30 in the morning, Otto called me and said, "Freedom House is on fire.
Yeah.
Come up here and
Yeah.
take some pictures." I said, "It's 1:30 in the morning."
Yeah.
Get up here, and I had to go.
That's Otto.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah.
And Freedom House worked on housing, Marksdale Gardens, and worked Archie Williams to have the first black-owned supermarket, and really believed in what Archie stood for.
In fact,
Now we
Archie
have-
was on the board till he died.
He was.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of serving with Archie, and he gives all the credit of his economic base and thinking to Otto and Muriel. He was quite a. His daughter now has a multi-million-dollar company. but,
Roxbury Technologies.
and I'll tell you, a lot of it came from the think tanks and work that went on at Freedom House. Wonderful. Gail, are you going to have any of those? I know a lot of organizations out there looking for someone to bring them together to try to look at what they should do, problem solve. Are you looking at possibly doing any of that?
I think that's a great role that Freedom House can play.
That's the role.
So we're looking at a couple of things to resurrect Project Reach. We have a grant request into the Boston Foundation to get that program started again. We brought the Project Reach alums back, and they all talk about, and they're now, I guess, in their late 30s and 40s, how they wouldn't be where they are. And they're all over the city, and they're all over the country.
You know,
So
some of these organizations might not know their origins. If you want me to come along to help them remember, I'll be glad to
So
be your
Project
partner.
Reach would
Sure.
be one, but I think there is a need for that think tank.
Sure.
Kind of
I'll be glad to join you
kind
with
of a
that
place. I think
anytime.
that'd be great, Joe.
Do Northeastern students work with Freedom House, and what are the opportunities for young people?
Well, I'm going to ask Maureen Spofford, who's our Director of Development, to say a few words, but we have had Northeastern students as recently as last year. You know, I'm trying to organize things to make, I think an internship, a student internship has to be meaningful. And so we're working on that, but Maureen, we've worked with Northeastern.
Yeah, we have worked with Northeastern for many years.
It's been a great relationship.
We need the resources to actually make it meaningful.
Experience. And Donnie, I've been talking with Donnie Perkins, and we are working towards that goal. We do need tutors in math and science. Our kids, I just looked at some report cards yesterday. We need some help with tutoring for math and science particularly. And I'm also concerned that when I look at the English and one sentence is a whole paragraph, I don't know what they're teaching. They call it language arts or something. They don't call it English anymore.
ELA.
ELA. So, you know, I haven't been around teenagers for a long time, so this is quite an experience to work with them. But I asked them right after Obama was elected to write a letter to him, and the letters were joyous. Even though these kids are worried about violence in the community, their lives have been touched, they've lost friends or whatever, Obama's election has done something for them.
Absolutely.
That I haven't, you know, it's given them an optimism I think that they didn't really have before.
Could you tell us what programs are functioning now at Freedom
Sure, we have the Golden Heirs, and they meet every week, and they also have a Tai Chi. They're very, very energetic. We have our Project Listen program, which is high school students. We're helping them with the MCAS, with tutoring after school, but more importantly, we're focusing on character proficiency, character building, and leadership. And we're asking them to pick an issue that they really are concerned about and work all year on that. Last year, they worked on a conference, and Dr. Carol Johnson, that was the very first thing that she went to when she came here to Boston. They're very focused on the dropout issue. We're in a coalition with 6 other organizations called the Multicultural Dropout Outreach Coalition. We worked with the school department over the summer to bring back kids who only needed a few credits to get them back into high school. 87 kids graduated. I'm trying to think what else are we doing, Maureen? Tech Savvy Seniors. And then the grants that we've written really are around Project Reach to really organize all of our work around that. I think one of the toughest things that we're experiencing is that this building, the brick part of the building was built in the 30s. And so one of the issues that we have, every time it rains, water comes in. So if it rains, I'm on the phone to Wayne at 6 o'clock in the morning, get over to Freedom House, get the mop out, we gotta get the water up. So we've written a grant to the National Historic Preservation.
That's great.
So, you know, I never used to pray, but now I pray every day. Please let this grant come through. Please let there be a check in the mail so that we can take care of what we need to take care of. But ultimately, Freedom House is not the building.
Yes.
You know, Freedom House is the people who care and the willingness to dedicate and commit to community building.
One of the things that your mom did, she was very, very interested in getting young people abroad. And I can't remember all the programs, but she would send kids all over the world.
Yeah.
Travel scholars.
Travel scholars.
And to the point where a bunch of us got together, led by a fellow named Hassan Miner and others, and we led the way to get the school, a school named after us, Snowden International. And that's a legacy I think it's really important to stress here, that legacy continues, that kids are able to look beyond their neighborhoods. She was always talking about that and always trying to let kids know that there's a world beyond them. I remember many a session that she had with them, and now there's a whole school named after her. It's a wonderful thing that Muriel was able to do.
Well, I have to apologize. I have to.
We do.
I have a hard deadline with picking up my son, so. But Gail, it's great to see you.
Good to see you.
I gotta come over. I haven't been over there in a while. I gotta come see. Yes, for sure.
And I'm calling you, Joe.
Yeah, yeah.
Segue to Joan,
No, I can't leave without some civics.
after which you'll have an opportunity to play on your own.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. Before I get started with this, I just wanted to thank everybody who is involved or was involved in this project in one way or another. First, thanks go to Gregor Trinkus Randall from the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. His organization, they re-granted money from the Institute for Museum and Library Services, and that's what enabled us to start this project. I also want to recognize all of the staff of the libraries, and if you would, please stand up. Martin Merling, Mary Menke, Karen Mergarian, Michelle Romero, Britta Albin, Abelin, thank you, sorry Britta. Henna Clutterbuck, Marissa Hudspeth, Rebecca Parmer, Heather Sterling, Ernesto Valencia, and Carl Yee. We also have two very special guests here with us this afternoon, and they are two of the photographers who took some of these images, Delbrook Binns and Julius Prince. Oh, he just stepped out. I think he knew this was coming.
That's typical.
And he escaped.
They're taking pictures.
I just want to put this collection in context. There are about 2,400 images in this database, and they represent about half of the total number of images that are in the collection. The other thing that is in the collection that's in the archives but not online is the records of Freedom House, papers, the reports, and committee minutes, and that sort of thing. Oh, so here the photographers are just moving in now. So this is the tip of the iceberg, and not only do I invite you to look at this material, but I invite you to come to the archives and explore some of the documents that go along with the photographs. So I'm just going to quickly navigate a little bit of this exhibit for you and mention that on the front table outside the door there are bookmarks that have the address of the exhibit, the URL. It's so that you can go and get to it very easily. So there are two ways of navigating this site. One is the preset indexes, and so we have three preset indexes, one for people, one for groups, and one for places. So if you want to browse, for instance, you get an A to Z list of places. And suppose you're browsing and you say, oh, Circuit Street, I'm interested in Circuit Street. You can see here that there are 11 images, and you click on the arrow and you get to the 11 images of Circuit Street. All of the background information that we have on the image is here, and you can click on this and you get a larger size of the image. I just want to point out that this watermark is so that people cannot use the image without our permission. We hope to.
Joan, can you just, because it's hard to read the metadata, can you just kind of explain some of the fields and use one as an example for people like me who can't read it from back here?
Well, it's just all the background information that you would need to know about a particular photograph. Whatever. Sometimes we don't have the information because it wasn't on the back of the photo, but when we do have it, there's the description. And this is, for instance, St. Joseph Cooperative Homes. There's a sign in front of the building under construction at Circuit and Washington Streets. The date is, we think it's 1967, March 24th. The photographer was the Boston Redevelopment Authority, Pierce Piermain. The place, Circuit Street and Washington Street, and the various topics, so that if you put any of these terms, any of these words into the next search that I'm going to show you, you'll come up with this image as well. Copyright, who owns the, sometimes this is more specific than others, but it's who owns the copyright, the rights of reproduction, so that for people who are interested in publishing it in a work that they might be doing, then we can kind of guide them in the right direction to get copyright information. And then the location is just where the physical photograph is, and this is a photo number that we assign. It's a unique number for each photo. So you can see some of these. And when you want to go home, you just click on the subtitle and you go to the home page. What was really gratifying to me was every single topic that was mentioned, that our panelists mentioned, I know we have photographs for in the collection. So, so that was pretty exciting. So, for instance, Gail mentioned the fashion fair. So you put in fashion under keywords, begin your search, click begin search, and you come up with 143 images about the Ebony Fashion Fair. And I wanted to show you.
Go back up to that one with Jackie Kennedy.
That's this one.
That one.
Yeah, there she is. This is the planning committee for the Freedom House, one of the Freedom House Fashion Fair programs. This is Jackie Kennedy, obviously, and this is Muriel Snowden.
Joan, that's one of Dell's.
That's one of Dell's pictures.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and
Thank you.
yeah. You're welcome. I'm going to show one of yours too. So that was coming later on. This is we're a little freeform right now, but this is actually in Hyannis. That photo. But there was one to show you the fashion. There was one that I wanted to show you, which is the youth fashion show, which I thought was really.
I think that's at
really
Freedom
cute.
House.
Yeah, yeah. And that was taken in about 1958. So you can see that there are a lot of different topics that you can get to. Fashion, my favorite topic. Well, not my favorite topic. Yeah, it is my favorite topic. Okay, baseball. There are only two, but here we go. They're very interesting. Here we have Jimmy Pearsall, and this is an event with the Jewish war veterans. 3 attendees at the Roxbury Youth Council sports night, and it was the Jewish war veterans and James Pearsall. So that was kind of interesting. And then this one is quite interesting as well. This was taken in 1959, and it was taken. Whoops, I screwed up. Wait.
I was at that.
You were.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a big event because you have.
It was the first black player.
Yes, Pumpsy Green, who is this fellow here, third from the left, and that's the first black player on the Boston Red Sox, the last team to integrate, by the way. And this is Herb Tucker from Freedom House, Harold Vaughn, Pumpsy Green, Ed Cooper, Earl Wilson, and Otto Snowden. So this is one of my favorite images. one of the speakers, I think it was Joe Warren, was talking about all the politicians who were involved with Freedom House, and he was absolutely right. And we have photographs of all of them. We have Governor Sargent and his wife. We have Senator Kennedy. We have Senator Brooke. We have Walter Washington and Ed McCormick, just to name a few. So there's Ed Brooke,
Teddy
Kennedy, Muriel and Otto Snowden. Now, one of the things that Freedom House is most famous for is urban renewal. And if you punch urban renewal in, you get 676 images. Obviously, we can't see all of those, but just to give you a sense, there were a lot of before and after shots that were taken of streets in Roxbury, and there were projects like Pilot House, for instance, a house that was revamped during the urban renewal era. So you can have a lot of fun searching keywords. You can also search any one of these fields, as we librarians call them. And I just wanted to search under photographer for all the words. And we have here a kitchen worker at Freedom House's Roxbury Work Study Project tutorial, taken by Julius Prince. And I'm pleased to say that he came bearing gifts, and he just donated another 100 images. 200 images. We're delighted. We're delighted by that. And then if we put in we have 24 images from Mr. Binns. This is the Ebony Fashion Fair. This was mentioned earlier. The costumes in this are absolutely, or the clothing is absolutely fascinating. And this is one is sailors from the HMS Ethiopia arriving at Freedom House's 1964 Showcase of the Stars. Yes, and Haile Selassie. So there are many ways to explore this collection, and I hope you'll all find time to explore them. And if you find any additions or corrections, please don't hesitate to let me know, because it'd be most useful to us. So thank you all for coming, and I think there's probably some food left. And we have 2 laptops, one over there. Is there another one? And one over there. And you can feel free to use this one too, and explore the collection now if you'd like.